Hi everybody, I'm Mike Gonzalez with Franklin PUD. I'm standing right outside of Ice Harbor Dam, right outside of Pasco on the Snake River. This river houses several dams just like this one that power the Northwest. Closest dam to Pasco is Ice Harbor, and this one is of particular importance to the Tri-Cities because it can kick in and provide power at any time when there's a peak load during the hot summer like right now, or the bitter cold winters that we have here in the desert of Washington. Well, dams like this one at Ice Harbor have fought a major battle to stay up and running. A federal environmental study 4 years in the making rejecting the call to breach the 4 lower Snake River dams. Instead, it recommends spilling more water over dams in the Columbia River hydro system. Well, now the dams are facing their newest fight. The Washington State Department of Ecology has added a river temperature provision into an EPA permit for Columbia River Basin dams. The EPA permit was designed to manage pollution coming in from equipment. It was never intended to try to control temperature of an entire river system. I had a chance to talk with Kurt Miller from Northwest River Partners about this latest battle, the science involved, and what's next in this ongoing saga of the dams.
We understand as a region that we have to be good stewards. Right.
In this next round of fights over dams in the Pacific Northwest, Kurt Miller knows the future of low-cost, carbon-free hydropower is in jeopardy. Because of recent regulatory developments in Oregon and Washington and at the federal level, dam operators are facing what Miller calls new and unattainable rules that put the hydro system at risk.
A river temperature issue is important because river temperatures matter to salmon. Salmon are cold water creatures. So whether they're in the river or in the ocean, they prefer cold water. And if the water gets too hot, it can actually, first of all, it can start to kind of upset them, but then beyond that, it can make it harder for them to feed, it can exhaust them, and eventually it can kill them.
The EPA says temperatures are hovering above the 68-degree required mark at several of the dams during the summer months, including Ice Harbor Dam that hovers around 70.5 degrees, Lower Monumental at 69.1, and Little Goose at 68.4 degrees. Miller says this is a complex issue involving multi-jurisdictional laws, but it has already been used as a reason by anti-hydropower groups to call for the breaching of the lower Snake River dams. However, there's a major problem with breaching dams to reach the new water quality standards.
One of the things people don't realize, the EPA actually came out with a report just recently, and it did say, first of all, that the water is too hot coming into the states. Second, it said that climate change is responsible for between 2 and 4 degrees Fahrenheit of warming of river temperatures, which is really serious if you think about that. But then they also modeled the effect of dams on rivers, and the EPA report said that the dams also increase river temperatures.
While the EPA used a model to attempt to estimate the effect of dams on river temperatures, it took actual temperature measurements of water coming in from Canada and Idaho. The TMDL report clearly demonstrates that water entering the U.S. from Canada is already too warm by a substantial margin to meet the Washington state standard in the summer months.
The rub is that the water that's coming in upstream from Canada into Washington state and then from Idaho into Oregon and Washington state is already so hot during the summer that it typically exceeds the limits that the states of Oregon and Washington have established. And so our concern has been that they really are potentially setting up the dams to fail, because if you set, just like in anything, if you set an unattainable standard, basically it's going to be one of those situations where no matter what the dam operators do, they're not going to be able to make the water as cool as the state limits if the water that's coming from upstream, the water they're inheriting, is already too hot.
The same is true for water entering the lower Snake River dams from Idaho. In fact, Idaho participated in developing similar guidance with the EPA for the Snake River in 2003. But in the end, Idaho dissented due to reservations about attainability. According to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality website, these reservations persist to this day. Even the EPA recognizes that meeting these temperature quality standards is going to be really difficult for the states of Oregon and Washington. So they've recommended to both that they change those standards.
There is another study by Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in 2002 that actually said, hey, without the dams, the water would be a lot shallower, and so it would be much more prone to heating. And so actually the dams, according to that study, and it's a peer-reviewed study, said that the dams actually help mitigate the extreme temperatures. They kind of take off the top and they kind of raise the bottom, and so they kind of make it a little bit more normal throughout the summer. So those are important things to understand, is that from that perspective, it's not entirely clear what the role on dams is, because we do have this mixed message or this mixed science. But the thing we do know is that the dams produce thousands of megawatts of carbon-free electricity. And if carbon and climate change is really driving river temperatures and ocean temperatures, then what the dams do is they help fight climate change.
This is the McNary Dam behind me. You can see how calm the water is. And these waters are a bit cooler than the regular river temperatures. So if you want to even out and make the river temperatures cooler, what you'll do is release this water upstream. The state of Washington is also weighing in. Vince McGowan, the water quality manager at the Department of Ecology, was quoted in the Seattle Times saying, quote, "This is just the beginning. We are going to have the opportunity to talk about what can happen and what is feasible. We're on the path where we can have those conversations with dam operators working with us on how they're going to meet our temperature standards," end quote. Miller says the problem with taking an excessive and unrealistic regulatory approach is that, in the extreme, it could add billions of dollars to the cost of operating the hydroelectric system without actually helping salmon. It could also add excess cost to communities who rely on the low cost of hydropower to make ends meet, especially now that residential customers in the Northwest are facing a financial crisis and residential energy consumption is rising because of the pandemic.
When you think of Franklin PUD and in Pasco, Washington, or you think of other organizations throughout the northwestern states, those utilities, those public power utilities, are not-for-profit utilities. So any increase in the cost of hydro operations essentially gets passed through directly to them. So if the state of Washington comes up with some really costly plans to try to force dams to lower river temperatures to levels that they really can't, that's all going to pass on to our members and the customers they serve at a time when we literally, as a nation and a region, cannot afford that.
The EPA accepted public comments through August 20th of this year, and after considering comments that they received, they may make modifications as appropriate and transmit the TMDL to the states of Oregon and Washington for incorporation into their current water quality management plans. Reporting for the Powerline blog at Franklin PUD, I'm Mike Gonzalez. Thanks so much for watching this documentary.